can you catch, can you run, can you jump? So for me personally, I think movement should start from 5 years of age and onwards. From a strength conditioning standpoint, where you start looking at technical ability and using external loads, I would say probably like when you start hitting puberty, so 13 for a lot of the kids, 12, 13, where we start doing the entry level stuff, and then more technical, higher levels of external load and stresses would probably be later pubescence or pre-adolescent age is when I would say is your like the time where you're going to start hitting like either good numbers or real exercises.
So how do you track that they're actually doing the work they're supposed to?
Obviously, there's a login. So when they're on the session, and then also some trust with the kids, and we're seeing them all the time. Like it's going to sound bad, but you can kind of tell if someone's not sharp, because you're in an environment where everyone's competitive, and if you're not sharp, it's going to show quickly. You're under the microscope every day. Like, you don't have the restrictions that college have, where you've got a certain number of hours that you're allowed. Yeah, like I see you every day. Monday to Friday, I see you every day. Like I can tell when you're off. Obviously, I'm relatively new, so it's a bit harder for me. But other guys there have been like there for like 2 years. They're seeing the kids every day, like Monday to Friday for 2 years.
If you have been watching the podcast for a while now, you'll have seen me wear these primitive athletic tops. They are now available, and I'm really excited because I work out in them a lot. I tend to work out quite hard, but I also like to be comfortable. So that's why when I was picking out the materials for this top, I went with a pure cotton. If you would like to get yourself a top and support the channel, they are available on my website, primitiveathletics.com. Athletics with an X. Hello and welcome back to PA Chalk Up. Today we have Ciaran. How are you doing, Ciaran?
Hi mate, you good?
I'm good. So let us know a little bit about yourself and how you got here.
My name's Ciaran Gannon. I'm a Academy Performance staff member for Philadelphia Union. I started in England. I'm from England. I'm from the north of England near Burnley, and somehow wound up in the United States of America. My wife is American, and that's probably a good reason why. And and then I've done a couple of internships at college D1 level here, and then I've progressed now myself into professional soccer.
Yeah. So what kind of experience have you had up until now?
Prior to this, if I go in chronological order, I started off as a personal trainer, kind of like everybody, working in a commercial leisure centre back home in England. Then after doing that for probably about half a year, closer to a year, I progressed and decided I wanted to kind of move into the sports sphere and kind of take the next leap of difficulty, I guess if you want to call it that, into my fitness journey, which was strength conditioning, is what I chose. From that, I got an internship with Warrington Wolves, which I was very fortunate to get. So I did that for a while, I think it was about 8 months. Would turn up a couple of times a week, once or twice, working in their academy with their under 17s and under 16s. So I kind of got to see like how rugby league academies work and what kind of arena I'll be walking into if I did this as a career. From that, a position came up in Cincinnati, which is where my wife's from. Kind of the stars aligned. I'm very fortunate that I kind of got the opportunity to apply for this internship, and I had somewhere to live, which is the hard thing for a lot of people. They don't always have that ability to, especially from where we're from across the pond. Mm-hmm. So I got the internship. I dropped everything, moved in with a wife and her family, and then she was only my girlfriend at the time. But then got an internship and did Olympic sports at D1 college at the University of Cincinnati. Did that for, it was meant to be, technically it was a full year, so it was the fall and spring semester of 2019-2020. But obviously COVID happened in 2020 around about, I think it was about January, February in England, and it didn't kick in here till March. At the time, my visa only allowed me to do the internship. My next step would have been a GA. So I had my undergrad, but I didn't have my master's. I decided, well, once basically all the GA opportunities dried up because colleges were just losing money left and right because of everything closing down, that I was coming back to the UK. I decided I was going to do my master's. So I did my master's back in England from 2020 to 2021 at UCLan. I did a master's in nutrition and exercise science with underneath Johnny Sinclair. Honestly, insanely smart. The guy has more letters behind his name than anybody I've ever met in my life. So I worked. That was a great opportunity, especially during COVID. We couldn't do anything, could we? We just sat there. So I sat there on my computer and just did all my work, which was great. Then I got an opportunity back in this year, start of this year, 2023, when the borders kind of opened back up. I'd come over here on a visa. I got an opportunity to work with Coach Ron McKeefery at the University of Washington. He'd previously offered me an internship, kind of similar to yourself, back in Fresno State back in 2020. So I reached out to him and I was like, can I basically do an internship? My position within my visa wouldn't allow me to actually work. So an internship was perfect. He agreed, which was amazing. Got the opportunity and I did the Summer 1, Summer 2 internship program there. So I started in just at the start of April after spring ball and continued all the way through till the end of July. During that time, obviously I decided I needed to work. The time was to step up and go into a role where I'm going to get paid and kind of take this career seriously, is a good way to put it. And then also kind of narrow my focus. I've typically been very general. I've worked with rugby league, but then I worked with Olympic sports. In that time, I worked with 12 out of the 16 sports they had at the University of Cincinnati. So I'd worked with pretty much everyone. And then obviously now when I went with Coach Ron McKeefery, I did American football. So it was time for me to kind of narrow my scope, and I realised that our football was my passion. I love American football as well as baseball and a couple of other sports. And they were really great to work with, but football is what I want to kind of sink my teeth into. I applied, did a bunch of stuff. Got very fortunate that I got down to an interview process with Philly Union in their academy. So me going for an academy performance coach role, interviewed. I actually didn't get the job. Unfortunately, another guy who's actually from 30 minutes away from where I'm from in England actually got the job. Then they reached out to me last month, asking me if I was still interested in the role, because they were opening up a new role within the academy. So I basically snapped his hand off and said yes. And I started, I've started probably the start of this month, November. Been there for close to 3 weeks now. Working with my primary responsibilities are within the weight room, every team in the academy pretty much, and then sometimes assisting with Union 2 if they need it, which is the second team. And then if any testing or anything is needed for the first team, then I might get called upon. But my primary responsibilities within the weight room are those guys, everyone in the academy, and then assisting with Union 2 when they need it. And then my actual primary responsibilities as my academy performance coach is under 14s to under 12s. They're my teams, if that makes sense. So they're the ones I do on-field work with. However, I will assist with under 15s, 16s, and 17s.
Yeah. So because this is a unique position, because we've both had sort of experience coaching in the UK and now America. What are some of the differences that you found between both?
The initial one will have to be, I believe in the UK or Europe, we are sports scientists first and then coaches second. So when I entered my first role, it was always best practice. What's the thing that's coming out in the literature? Who or what are we doing that maximizes the most we can within the weight room? It was kind of vice versa when I got to America, when I got my D1 experience, it was more coach. They were coaches first, and then the sports science aspect is now started to really, really grow in the past couple of years. But there was sports scientists second. So it was a lot more basis on culture and coaching ability. My skills as a coach actually improved a lot more in
Mm.
America. I walked into here and felt like I had a much better foundation of sports science than the majority of people in my position as an intern or entry level strength and conditioning coaches. But that's also different to because of our education system.
Mm.
When you go and do your undergraduate, I actually only did my undergraduate in sport coaching, so not all of my coaching was on, not all of my course was on sports science, but I had a good, strong sports science background. I even did sports science at college, and that lended me to coming into a role where my sports science was actually greater in some regards than others. Now it's becoming a much more even playing field, but the soccer realm's a bit different because it is sports science led. I'm working with people that are again multicultural from all over the world, as well as sports science first. However, I would say for the majority, especially in the college experience or environment, it's coach first, sports science
Yeah.
second, and then vice versa.
What about in terms of athletes? What are the differences that you found?
Um,
And as well, I realized that you've sort of had different age groups as well. So you kind
I
of,
would. Sorry, go on.
no, you're good.
I would say the lifting is built in as a culture here. It's less of a fight, I think, in
Mm.
some regards. Don't get me wrong, you're always going to get athletes that don't want to work out in the weight room. They want to be either on the field doing their sport or on the track. But um, kids here are working out in high school, or if they come
Hmm.
into a college setting, it's understood that part of you being a D1 athlete, for example, is you go in the weight room. Like if you turn around and told kids that were 18 playing soccer or football that at 6 a.m. we're going to go and lift for an hour, they're going to turn around looking and go like, do
Yeah.
what, mate? Like, yeah, I am not interested. However, I was in rugby, so rugby was a bit different because you understand that the physical demands of the sport requires you to actually be able to lift and work out.
Yeah.
You can't be
I started
small.
at 13.
Yeah,
I started lifting at 13. My coach was like, let's go.
yeah. See, whereas I was a football guy, so like, man, I didn't touch a weight till I was 17, 18 in college. So, and football, when I did it was you did push ups and sit ups, and then you just ran. Whereas now it's a bit different, but in the US, it's like everyone
Mm.
lifts. Like you've got to lift. It's just built
I
into
think
it.
it's more of a box standard thing. It's like as soon as you're specializing in a sport, they're like, weight room, let's get you
100%.
to the next level.
But even now, like high schools, majority. I'm not going to say all high schools, but a vast majority of high schools have weight room with the strength conditioning coach in them
Mm.
now, and even some middle schools. So like you've got kids, some of them lifting at 10, actually
Yeah.
like working out. And don't get me wrong, they're not lifting weights, but they're doing movement competencies and
Hmm.
like balance coordination, agility. It's they're actually learning about their body and how to move it, which is I think it's fantastic. But
Yeah.
and I wish we did it in the UK personally. I wish we had something in that high school arena. But then it's you've got to now look at the what's the track to go professional in certain sports. In the
Yep.
UK, you don't have that. Like if you're good, you go into an academy. If you're good here, you play high school, then you go to college, then you'll typically go pro. However, again, that's kind of changing. Now it's an evolving thing.
Yeah. To be fair, I've mentioned him a while back, and I keep mentioning him again and again. But there's a coach in Scotland. His name's Rob Anderson. But he does the athletics side, not the athletics, but like the youth development of
Mhm.
athletes. And his stuff is amazing. I'm hoping to get him on soon. So to be fair, we do know each other. Like he used to coach in Gala where I'm close to,
Mhm.
and I used to speak to him, and we've connected again. And we're talking about him having coming on, but like his athletic development sort of program is solid. Like,
hmm
and this is something that I really like to speak to people about, especially when they're younger, working with younger generations as well. Is what's your thoughts on what age they should start, and how would you progress them?
Are we talking lifting weights or just exercising?
Just S&C work.
S
Keep
and
it
C
broad.
work.
Yeah.
Um, so that's a tough one because um, I think personally that movement is a more important thing at a younger age. So it's not so much about S and C, more so about
Movement efficiency.
movement efficiency and competency. Like there's a guy, I can't remember his name. I think his name's Jeff Toohey or something. I've got him on Twitter. He does a bunch of stuff in the US, basically like obstacle course work and jumping, and can you bound from one space to another? Can you so I'm a qualified teacher in the UK, and I used to go and work for a sport development company going into primary schools. So I used to work with Key Stage 1 and 2, and like, mate, in the entirety of Key Stage 1, all we did was like floor is lava, beanbag games,
Mm.
like can you catch, can you run, can you jump? So for me personally, I think movement should start from 5 years of age and onwards. From a strength conditioning standpoint, where you start looking at technical ability and using external loads, I would say probably like when you start hitting puberty, so 13 for a lot of the kids, 12, 13, where we start doing the entry level stuff, and then more technical, higher levels of external load and stresses would probably be later pubescent or pre-adolescent age is when I would say is your like the time where you're going to start hitting like either good numbers or
Mm.
real exercises. Like I'm not going to teach a 14-year-old how to clean and jerk. Like there's the payback for what I can get for in that time isn't worth it. At 18, 19, and absolutely right, like because they need to learn to handle that external load.
Mm.
Whereas at 13, 14, they need to be able to do a goblet squat. They need to
Okay.
understand a squat pattern or a hinge pattern. So when I'm working with the academy, it's a lot of can we do the basic movement patterns? Can we the other difficulty is again with puberty. I might have a kid at 13 who's now 6 foot. I might have
Mm.
a kid that is, and he's 6 foot and he's like 145 pounds. Or let's say if we're talking in pounds, kilos, he might be like 50 kilos, 55 kilos, right? But then I might have another kid who's 5 foot barely, and he's like 95 pounds. Like he's 35 kilos, 40 kilos. Like
Mm.
he's not gonna he's not gonna be able to do the same things as the other kid. The other kid though, when he's hitting puberty, he might be his son corner, he might be Bambi on ice because he's had a 6-inch growth spurt. He doesn't understand his depth perception's
Somewhere.
off, all of it, right, mate? Like it's gone. So that makes it hard to then try and turn around and be really progressive in a structured, like you can't do linear progression
Mm-hmm.
in a workout. Like you can't. It's not. It doesn't work like that because the kids aren't there. So we
Yeah.
do. You focus on the foundations is the best way.
Yeah.
And those
So
foundations.
what would be your progression through movement efficiency when they're starting out?
As a 13-year-old, as a
Yeah. So just the age groups that you have, like, what's
yeah.
your process behind them?
So for us, it's a lot. It's jumping, hopping, single leg work. Can you accelerate? Can you deaccelerate? Can you jump horizontally and vertically? Can you also
Mm.
land? So we work on landing mechanics and understanding space and spatial awareness in that regard. Don't get me wrong, we're not looking for like rate of force development outcomes just yet, or we'll do plyometrics, but we're not looking at the huge plyometric outcomes. We're looking at just getting the movement down, them
Yeah.
getting used to bouncing or jumping. Then we'll do basic movements such as a squat, a knee dominant exercise, a hinge, horizontal pressing, vertical pressing, again horizontal pulling and vertical push, vertical pulling. Then we'll try and move them around and change up the modalities for that. Can we start linking up an external load? kettlebell is an easy example for a goblet squat, or can we get them doing the chin up? Can I try and get them to pull themselves over a bar? We'll do hangs and things like that and start working on grip strength and all of those little things but we try and put it in more of a fun modality. We're not looking for the big performance outcomes. We're looking for the basics. Can you pull? Can you engage your lats as you're pulling? Can you understand that? Whereabouts am I supposed to place my hand when I'm doing a bench press? With a dumbbell, it's different to a barbell. Do you understand that your elbow doesn't want to be all the way up and out? Do you want it tucked? Like, we can start working on them understanding what we're trying to see. But then we'll also work on trunk stability, so anti-rotation, anti-extension, but then also extension and rotation work. And then the way to kind of elaborate on that is we'll start adding more complexity to certain movements. So we'll add some coordination demand on certain things. So in a plyometric standpoint, you could ask them to jump onto the plyo box. You could land and then maybe laterally bounce. We can switch it up and kind of demand them to do different things. As they progress, though, we want to start adding some load or adding more stress so we can kind of work on building them up and being stronger, because where the setting we're in, it's a high competition setting. Like, these kids the ultimate goal is they're feeding all the way up to the first team. The goal is to bring the group of players all the way up. These kids aren't just the regular, I'm going to kick a football around. They've made a choice. They come in, a lot of them, not all of them, but a chunk of them or a group of them are in the school that we have within the academy setting. So with all our performance setting, we have an actual academy where they go in and they do the schoolwork. Therefore, they're going literally from school straight to the pitches where they go and do the training and the practices, and then they come into us as well in the weight room. Like, it's all together in one little area, where we're kind of just trying to harness like a really good football atmosphere, as well as give them, they've got to start progressing, because they're high performers in the area. Like, we've recruited them into the club for a reason.
Yeah. So what does the day-to-day look like for yourself?
So for me, it's it can vary. So we have a couple of days, typically 2 days a week, where I'm primarily in the weight room. So in the mornings, I'll be in the weight room with a group of kids, so either like under 15s, under 13s, the union development squad. Then in the afternoon, again, I'll probably be in the weight room, and then I'm with maybe another age group that we didn't manage to hit during earlier in the day. So 2 days a week is definitely me in the weight room primarily, and then 3 days a week. So typically it's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'll be out for practice. So they'll have practice pretty much like 4 to 5 times a week, depending on the age group. My ages, they only practice 4 times a week. So Friday is usually like a down day for me. They will practice. They'll have an hour to an hour and a half session. My primary role is to start doing pre-activation, warm-ups, things like that. The model we're going for with my boss, Ephemios, he wants us to do a tactical element. So we're trying to use the ball as much as we can. So with the coaches I'm working with, we're going to start integrating a tactical element. So the first drill is usually like a combination of me and the coach coming up with a drill where we're working with the ball, but we're looking for some physical performance outputs. Can they laterally shuffle? Can they sprint? And that'll also depend upon the session type. So we're then working alongside the coaches on how they're programming. So are they make sure we're not overloading the athletes and the kids. Make sure we've kind of got a solid, rigid plan that we can kind of follow. So we've got intensive practices, extensive practices. So an intensive practice, for example, would be a small-sided games where there's a lot of hard de-acceleration, a lot of lateral movements, hard de-accelerations. Therefore, when we do the tactical session or the tactical drill at the start, we'll kind of try and mimic that, try and show a demand where they really are priming and focusing on a strong lateral shuffle or a hard de-acceleration, and we'll kind of work with the coaches on that. Coaches love it because it gets the football involved. We've got the ball, and that's all the coaches want. But then for the kids, it's great because some of them just don't want to. Obviously, you don't want to be in the weight room. You want to play football. That's the whole point. So yeah, Monday, Wednesday, Fridays typically practices, and then Tuesday, Thursdays me primarily weight room. However, I sometimes, depending on the day, we'll go out and do practices either in the morning or the afternoon, and then during the day is typically admin work. So meetings, programming, doing any data collection. Yeah, data collection. We have our own system where we provide like a visual for the coaches of like how the kids are doing. So not my teams. I sometimes help out with the other teams, but we'll have like catapult and GPS data and things that we'll show to the coaches and kind of be like, look, this is where they've been at. Right, you turned around and said that it was an intensive day, or the load is meant to be here. This is what the kids actually did, etc., etc. Like, so we can we're always in constant communication. So that's usually like during the middle of the day, and then it's either practice in the morning or the afternoon, depending on what teams you work with.
So what kind of sort of management systems do you have to track their loads, and how do you actually manage their loads for their age groups?
So we, first and foremost in the weight room, we're tracking as much as we can. With the younger kids, we track a lot less. With the older kids, we're tracking a lot more. So we'll prescribe weights or RPEs and do things like that. They'll also do a health screening sometimes. So we'll be like, how was your day? Did you eat? How did you sleep? Blah, blah, blah. Then we have GPS data, and then we also do screening and testing. So we have a Nord board, groin bar, for like Hawkins Dynamics, force decks. So we'll periodically screen for those. And then typically we'll go off, we'll marry that GPS data, like I said, with the session type or what sessions are going on with the coaches. Again, because it's academy setting, we don't want to do too much. Does that make sense? We don't want to track too much and create too much of a data profile because we're working with a lot of kids. It's not like working with the first team where you got a small squad and you can kind of get into the true nitty gritty. But we'll be doing screening, fitness testing, typical outputs, and then build a database. But it's also difficult in certain regards because we have certain kids that are new, they're coming to the club. Certain kids leave the club. So ours is kind of like a revolving door in that sense sometimes. And then obviously schedules are kind of tough here because we have tournaments, we have certain games that will change. So game days aren't the same for everybody. But typically, our management tools will be primarily GPS. We'll test in the weight room. We'll do no boards, groin bar, and then we'll also do Hawkins Dynamic force plates as well as marry that all up with all the data we're collecting from the coaches as well.
Can you explain why the Nord board and all that stuff is important to measure the stress outcomes of them?
So for us, it's about building a database for a lot of the kids. They don't actually have that, but typically you want to build up a foundation of, let's say this is our level of strength. You can then test in season periodically or weekly, depending on however you want to do it. And then you can have an indicator or a marker of a percentage of a drop off, and which that can highlight that the person is either stressed or, for example, like the hamstring. Let's say we're doing the no board. Let's say the left hamstring is off by 20%. That'd be huge, right? That's a massive red flag. That's their liability for their hamstring to go on the left side is going to happen. It's a matter of time. So then that's when we have the conversation with the coaches or the members of staff and be like, look, either he tapers down on his training or we taper him down in game time. But we can also do that from a team outlook and team perspective. We set certain markers or certain boundaries or thresholds is a good way to put it, that we don't want the athlete or the player to kind of go past. Otherwise, it's indicative of a negative outcome for us. Same with GPS and things like that as well. We'll have certain loads, so we'll have like their average total distance that they'll cover in a game. Right, this guy's gone. He's in the red. He's done 3.5K more than he's done in all his previous games. He's going to be knackered in the next 2 days. So, like, we need to make sure we keep an eye on him as a staff in the next match day -1 or match day -2. Like, in those training sessions and things, we need to keep it playing. Or we can do the entire team. The entire team.
Yeah.
Maybe it was a cup final. They did extra time. All of them are in the red. Like match day -1 and match day -2 might be full regen, so days off. Like we need to work out and work with the kids. It's just basically for us to kind of manage their load and reduce the likelihood of injury. And we'll set those thresholds. The issue is you've got to collect the data to get those thresholds. That's all.
100%. How receptive are the coaches to allowing their players to take some time off or reduce their stress and weight in the gym?
So for us, again, it's probably slightly different than other places because we're an academy and we've got people from South America, Europe, coaches, and we're with the coaches all the time. Like we work with them on the field as much as we can. We work I'll do the warm up, I'll do the pre-activation and all that stuff in the first tactical drill, but like I'm still there for the rest of the practice. I'm helping out the coach do the rest of the drills and things. So we're fully integrated, which is really nice for us. So then we have that conversation all the time. We're meeting every day, and for us, we kind of get on the same page. The coaches understand. Don't get me wrong. Sometimes you have to sit there and we have to explain, like, this is what we're seeing. Maybe we need to taper it down, and they might disagree. But we'll have once you've got that bank of data, they'll understand. And then also our coaches are very good on their practices, so they're very good on programming and ensuring that they're not doing too much, or we're programming effectively or properly to ensure that the kids are getting the most we can out of the sessions without breaking them. So for us, it's quite nice and comfortable. I've been in some college environments where that's a difficult conversation. Where certain coaches just don't want to hear it. For us, we're again very, very fortunate. We're all one team, and because we're so well integrated, it makes that conversation a little easier. And they're very receptive because we're in so academies here in the US it's a growing thing. Like it's not as prevalent as it is in Europe or the UK or South America. So they're trying to get around to the idea of this is how things are going to go. And obviously a lot of us are from external places where they're understanding that they need to be receptive of what we've got because we're bringing some value. Like everybody that I'm working with we're all there for a reason. Like I'm talking, you've got over 100, so it's sidetracking, but the job I applied for, there was 78 applicants and he shut down the application process. So there've been over 100 applicants just for the interview. So you kind of in such a you're in with a bunch of high performers is the best way to put it.
Yeah.
Like you can't turn around and just be like, it's my way or the highway, because that doesn't work. We're all there for a reason. So we've all got some value to bring, which is really great because everyone then wants to listen and then work and kind of get the most out of outcomes.
100%. So how do you create this buy-in with the younger athletes and that are progressing through?
I think part is because they understand that where they are. At Philadelphia Union Academy, like it's a bit of a prestigious name. They understand they're kind of not looking to be here, but they're here because they're good. Yeah, and we're here for a reason too, to make them better. So, like the latest academy prospect that's really big in Europe was Brandon Harrison. Like he went to Leeds United and then he's playing at Union Berlin. There's a really good opportunity for them to kind of progress and get really far. Therefore, that's part and parcel a really easy buy-in for us. Then secondly, we make it understandable. Like, so when they come into the weight room, before we even start working out, we have the workout or things that we're going to talk about up on the TV. And we'll explain, and our job is also to educate. So we'll tell them why we're doing certain things. Like we're not here to just be like, you got to give me 20 push-ups and that's it. Like there's not. We're exploring with them to make sure that we're teaching as well as coaching. I'm not just a person that tells you to lift weights. I'm hopefully educating you to understand why it's important that we're doing certain things and what you'll get out of it if you do it right. Because again, football is a sport that was synonymous beforehand without doing this. People didn't want to work out or do the part in the gym. So it's making our job part to make sure that they understand what we're doing. Otherwise, it's not going to go too well.
Yeah. With your progression, what are some of the key things that you've sort of learned that you are now applying?
Um, that's a difficult one because the standardized progressions aren't for everybody. My coaching eye as well is different to other coaches' coaching eye. And typically I'm working alongside another coach. I'm also coming into the environment, so I'm not trying to take over their workouts or their sessions because we're typically my groups are amalgamated with other groups. So another coach has already been coaching there prior to me turning up. So for me, I'm just trying to add my value to those sessions. The progressions really are dictated by what they want to do for now. With regards to that, I'm kind of just looking for certain outcomes of that they can hit the movement competencies, and we'll have a discussion as a staff at the end. So we've got Thanksgiving obviously now. We go back to Christmas for
Tomorrow.
and
When this is again filmed.
tomorrow. Yeah. Then we're back in December, but then they got Christmas break, so not until the new year is when we'll start discussing what's the progression for the kid next or the kids next. And not everyone's at the same level, unfortunately. And we've got a short period of time. So with regards to progressions, we're just going to try and keep it the very similar modalities or exercises. We're just going to switch up what kind of like the orientation or the modality that they'll use instead.
This is something that I'm finding quite interesting just now is their sort of performance age. And what I mean by that is like you kind of touched on it, like some kids hit their growth spurt really quick. Some kids take a while to get there. How do you siphon through that and that creating that talent over a long period of time?
So obviously we track growth maturation, and some kids will play up if they're good enough. Some kids will play down. I'm not aware of anybody that's actually currently playing down at the moment, but we've got some kids playing up. Some playing up a couple of years actually, because they've got the talent. However, with regards to maturation and things, that's a tough one. If they're physically performing well enough, and obviously they're physically built enough, but they're also outperforming their age group, they'll typically go up, or they'll start training or practicing with the other age groups. Again, we're pretty lucky. We kind of have that fluidity where guys can go up or down, or they can jump up and practice with a different team. That makes it hard for us as coaches because sometimes they're not in our sessions. Like I might plan for you to be in my session, but now you're actually training with, let's say you're in the under 15s, you're now training with the under 17s. Well, the under 17s are on a different schedule, and that might just have happened like last week. So now I'm expecting you to turn up in the weight room. You're now trying to do the workouts that the under 17s are doing, and you got to jump into that. So again, our workouts and things have to be accessible, but also kind of spread across all age groups, apart from the early progression group or the youngest one. So the under 14s and under will do the most basic movements, but from under 15s up, like that, an example is they're all doing trap bar. Like every single one of them is doing trap bar. So that's an easy exercise that they're moving one to the next. We're trying to make the workouts kind of balanced across the board that they can all do, but there's just certain things that we're obviously changing the stresses, either higher load or different starting positions or slightly different requirements. That changes per age group, but we're trying to make it kind of across the board the same, just so then we have that fluidity if they do move up and down.
Yeah. So with that, what are some of the like programming sort of essentials that you make so that any kid can bounce in between the programs?
Again, that's a tough one because we're currently in an on-hold weight room, if that makes sense. It's not our weight room. We're building a new facility, so we're going to be changing. That's going to change again. So like you'll talk to me, like we'll talk in August next year, and I'll be like, look, we're in a totally different weight room where we've got like 12 different racks and we've got X amount of machines. So again, that changes. So for now, what this block is, I can tell you what we've been doing for now is we're working on lower body strength, primarily looking at kind of slightly end range strength and movement, as well as posterior chain. So we did that throughout the whole group. Next block might be upper body strength, right? We might try and collect some data now on upper body horizontal pushing strength, so bench press, right? But we're probably not going to do bench press because we've only got two weight racks with barbells. That's kind of hard. So for us, it's kind of, we're trying to make do with the space we've got at the moment, and give one kind of outcome or one outlook that we're going to kind of focus on per block. But again, that changes because we've got to kind of balance it between the schedules. There's a lot of tournaments and things coming up for us, especially in the new year in the spring. That's going to be like a really tough time of year for us. So for us, sometimes some certain kids aren't attending certain workouts because they've just been to a tournament on the weekend, so they're not here. So for us, it's kind of like, we've got to simplify it. We can't make it too complicated. As much as we want it to be as perfect as we can, sometimes going a little bit more simple is going to be better for us, or focusing on just one thing and then having them do like a non-specific general workout would be better for us, or we would receive better outcomes rather than being as like highly specified as we can. Because I don't have full control over their, or we don't have full control over their schedule all the time. It's not like college again. There's one team. Like, the great thing about working with one team was you've got control throughout the year. Like, and it's standard. Like, so soccer, for example, your in season is the fall. As soon as you hit spring, you're off.
Yeah.
So now I have off season, pre-season, in season. Like, I have a full, like a really nice schedule which I can flush it out. We're playing like the kids are playing now. They're playing in the spring. Like, we don't have as long windows as like a nice college does. So we've got to kind of try and get what we can out of the time, but also balance everything else.
Yeah.
Which makes it hard. But then that's also 100%. What we're there for.
Yeah. In terms of sort of their progression, what do you do in sort of, obviously ACL injuries and trying to mitigate that as much as possible, even though like with football it's a non-contact sport, but there is a lot of contact type injuries and non-contact type injuries with their ACLs. How do you sort of manage that, and what is it that you implement to mitigate that from happening?
So obviously a lot of the weight room stuff will be focused on building that resilience and strength to all of those factors. So common injuries like hamstring, ACL, anything Achilles related as well, anything like that, groin related as well. Those common injuries, we hit them. Like, the kids are doing Copenhagen planks like nearly every session, or they're doing some form of hamstring work. Like, we're working quite regularly on things like that. Then when we're out onto the field and practice, we're ensuring that we're doing the correct practice. We are hitting, again, the right loads. Session types change. We never do, like, you're not doing just like 6 days of intensive sessions, because you're obviously going to break down the kid. Yep. Like, if you're just doing small-sided games throughout every week, every session, every practice every week, like, the kid's not going to last too long. So obviously that's also down to the coaches as well as us to kind of talk and load manage the kids effectively, but also get as much as we can out of the session. So that gives them their different tactical appliances to it. Can you see me? Yeah. There we go. Yeah. So with regards to that, it's kind of like a team effort. It's not just a straight, simple answer, but also giving them the stresses of the game and the sport. Like, they have to have those intensive days, because sometimes the game requires them to do a lot of hard acceleration and a lot of deceleration. Then we have extensive days, like you've got to cover a good bit of distance. Like, you've got to run, like, and you've got to cover a lot of yardage. There's a lot of transition work and things like that. Like, you're going to have to practice that. So it's about kind of giving the kids that stress, but in a manageable load, and then in a precise what's the word? A precise dosage that we've given them. So prescribed dose. That's
Yeah.
word I was looking for. Giving them something that we prescribed, because we understand that we've got to try and get a nice balance and that together where we can kind of expose them to everything, and then they play the games. The nice thing about, say, my age is like they're all young, like they recover like that. They're ready to go within an hour. The older they get, the harder it is. So yeah, it's just about we work on everything. We do mobility, pre-activation, like we're trying to do the right things all the time, rather than and give the kids the stress all the time, because we can't have them be weak in their areas, because they don't have, if they're not able to meet game demands, they don't play. Is a good way to put it. Like, you're not going to be here long if you're not meeting the standard that's required. So if you're not available or able to do that, like we have a duty of care to the kid as well. Like, we've got to look after you from a physical, emotional, and mental standpoint. We've got to kind of make you as robust as we can all around. So we do everything we can in that regard, from a coaching perspective as well as a human perspective as well. Like, we talk to the kids, we see them every day. Like, we're around them all the time. So it's a case of we're doing that as well as nutrition, and like getting the kids. So a new focus for us is making sure the kids are getting adequate nutrition, and then that's also a requirement on post, like, game day, and like between at half time, making sure they're getting some fast acting sugars on board, just so we can kind of keep performance high and kind of ensure that they're eating properly and things like that, and try and put those strategies in place where we can kind of get the best we can out of the kids, so that they can hopefully make a career out of this sport, which is our goal. We want to make them as good as we can. And then they've just got to put the work in. It's like I do as much as I can, and you got to do your part still. Like, I can't control you when you go home, so you got to go home and go and sleep. Like, if you don't sleep and you're up till 3 a.m. in the morning, like, that's going to affect you.
100%. In terms of their schedules, how does that work with sort of schoolwork and training and then performing in games and all that stuff?
So with regards to school and stuff, they've got a window between the day. They only work, because of the school, they're working in small groups, so they can get so much more work done, because they're not in a classroom of 30 or 32. They're in a classroom of 5 or maybe 10. So, and then they're in school, I think it's like 4 or 5 hours, maybe, I think. So it's just short. It's a little bit shorter than a regular public school. But they'll do the schoolwork Monday to Friday, and then they'll practice and things around that. Like, there's a set time we have where they go to school, they finish, and then they'll either practice in the morning or practice in the afternoon, or they'll lift it in the morning or lift in the afternoon. Like, it's all around that school schedule. So school kind of becomes core, and then we build everything else around that.
Yeah. So what's your take on sort of early specialization in sport or multi-sport as you're growing up?
Okay, so I've been kind of brought into my role within under 14s and under, is to kind of get that multi-sport aspect. So my job is to actually start integrating certain demands that give the kids not just that total early specialization in football, like working on hand-eye coordination, playing games. Like, I always use the analogy, and I was talking to my boss about it. It's like, I remember playing badminton in PE, and there was a kid who was in the academy from the age of 9, goes and plays badminton at 15, 16, can't hit the shuttlecock, can't miss, swing, miss. Put him on a football pitch, he acts like he's God's gift. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Like, he's mint. So my job's to make him well-rounded, and that make the kids as well-rounded as we can in that regard. However, football is a sport where early specialization happens, and I think personally, I like the idea of kids doing everything. Like, if you go home, I'd like you to go and play a different sport, or like have the availability to play table tennis or ping pong on the side in the club, so you can do some stuff with your arms, or We do little events and things. I think that, or we might be doing events and things where they'll play some sports that are slightly different. It's like some kids went and did jiu-jitsu. The 17s went and did jiu-jitsu instead of a weight session, right? They went and did Brazilian jiu-jitsu with their coach. Like, that's a great experience because now they're doing something that's not in their wheelhouse, if that makes sense. Just getting those exposures in that we can. However, the sport we're in and the level we're at, you're playing. Everyone's playing all the time, and if you don't play all the time, then you're not going to match. But then now the problem with that is obviously repetitive strain injuries, and making the kids not as well rounded. We're obviously, with the school and things, we're giving the kids the best educational opportunity as well as we can, because not all of them. And we also have one of the colleagues, Ian. He works alongside with colleges, so like not every kid's going to go pro. So he's the guy that he's the bridge between colleges and then us. And colleges, obviously, they're loving it because they're like, D1, we're coming in, we're going into an MLS academy. I know I'm getting talent straight off the line that'll come and play for us. They'll go straight into our squad. We'll give them a full scholarship, and then the kids are getting a full ride. So, yeah, like, it's going to end up being, I think it's going to end up being the case, don't quote me on it, but anyone that's worth a grain of salt in a football setting will be playing academy or pro. Like, if you're playing college, you're playing college because you didn't make the grade, unfortunately. It sounds bad, but it's just, it's just the way it is, unfortunately. Yeah. It's like anyone that plays football at university in England. Like, you're playing at uni level because you didn't make it pro.
Yeah. Is there a chance for them to eventually get to pro from D1 schools?
Yeah, so they still can get drafted. If they're good enough, they'll get drafted off that. We also have second teams now as well. So like there's like, so for us, Philadelphia Union 2. Like, they're not the first team, but they're on that age. It's very competitive though, which is highly competitive. Like, these guys aren't here for a long time. Like, you're either good enough to kind of make it. You've got guys that from the academy that are trying to make it to the first team, and that Union 2 teams, that in between point. So you got kids that go to college, and then they might make it like the second team for an MLS team to then try and get into the pro scene. But then sometimes they'll get drafted straight to the pro scene. It depends, because sometimes, unfortunately, they might slip through the cracks, and they'll get through the cracks of an academy setting, and they might just thrive in the D1 setting. So as far as I'm aware, still, you can still get drafted into the MLS.
Yeah. What's your sort of philosophies and principles that you put into these programs to develop these kids?
My philosophy, I think for me, availability is king. I just need to make these kids as readily available for the coaches to play the sport as I can. So for me, that entails ensuring that everyone is physically robust enough to handle the game. I need to make you as injury-proof as I can, but sometimes you can't. Injuries are always going to happen, but I need to try and make it try and give you the best opportunity to play the game as much as we possibly can, and then any performance outcomes on top of that are amazing and fantastic. But my job is to make sure that you're fit and healthy enough to meet the game demands. So for us, it's making sure that the kid's well-rounded. Like, he's strong, but he's also got endurance. We work on sprint mechanics, and the older they get, obviously looking at rate of force development and like that stretch shortening cycle and ensuring that they're explosive, but also working on the fact that they need to have like good core stability and core strength. So a lot of anti-extension, a lot of anti-rotation, resisting of external forces, in the sense of not just the sagittal plane, but the frontal plane. Like, because the sport again is not linear. It's not like a 100-meter sprint where they're just going in a straight line. Like, we go side to side, back and forth. Like, working on unilateral exercises as well. Like, you're not just working on two legs all the time. You're on one leg, and for us, it's making sure that those demands that we know physically that you'll probably get within a game. You're going to be able to meet that, and then loading that in a safe manner that we can in the weight room. Then when it gets to the field, then we put you in those situations. As bad as it sounds, we're going to put you in that situation where you might get into it in the game, and we'll kind of, I don't want to say protect you, but we'll kind of look out for you and make sure that we're getting what we can out of the session for you to make you physically handle the strain. Because kids are going to be sore in certain regards, like especially after tournaments.
100%. What's some recovery tactics that you implement?
Sleep. Obviously the number one recovery tool is telling the kids to sleep.
Turkey milk.
Chocolate milk, nutrition, making sure that they're getting adequate nutrition, not eating, obviously reducing saturated fats and things. We don't, like, every kid's going to eat some, like McDonald's or like some fried chicken and stuff, but trying to make sure that there's other better options as well, and having some whole foods or some fresh foods is always much better. And as well as making things like, in certain regards, macro or micronutrient dense, trying to make them smoothies or protein shakes and things like that. Then with regards to sessions, we obviously go like match day -1, match day -2, and then we'll have like a full regen day, where a regen day may be they do some practice in the sense of they do something like football, tennis, right? Like it's easy, still kind of working with a ball, but we'll spend more time doing mobility and stretching and working on some little bits of pre-activation and kind of doing some movements where we know they can handle it. It's easy, it's low intensity, but they're moving. They're not just sat there doing nothing. Depending upon, obviously, if they've been at a tournament all weekend, then we'll give them a day off and then come back in the next day after that and then recover. But then also we start putting them back under stress, because to make them stress proof, you've got to stress them to get them to that point. So they're not doing a week off. They're not doing a week off. Like the kids are all off this week for Thanksgiving. They've still got 4 sessions of a workout they've got to do.
Right.
They got 2 sessions where they got to lift, and then 2 sessions where they got to do some running. Like, because they've all got a tournament coming up in like 2 weeks. You can't afford to have the week off. Like, you've got to keep yourself physically primed.
Yeah, and I'm guessing this is all tracked then by GPS units and.
So with regards to the weights and the lifting, that's all off Bridge. We use Bridge Athletic right now.
Okay.
Then when it comes back into session, we'll use GPS and stuff, but not when they're at home. No.
Right. So how do you track that they're actually doing the work they're supposed to?
Obviously, there's a login. So when they're on the session, and then also some trust with the kids, and we're seeing them all the time. Like, it's going to sound bad, but you can kind of tell if someone's not sharp, because you're in an environment where everyone's competitive, and if you're not sharp, it's going to show quickly. You're under the microscope every day. Like, you don't have the restrictions that college have, where you've got a certain number of hours that you're only allowed. Yeah, like I see you every day, Monday to Friday. I see you every day. Like, I can tell when you're off, because obviously I'm relatively new, so it's a bit harder for me. But other guys there have been like there for like 2 years. They've seen the kids every day, like Monday to Friday for 2 years. Like, they can tell when you're not on it. And then obviously practices are hard. They're not easy. Everyone's good. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%. What's some advice that you would give SSC coaches coming into this industry or wanting to come into this industry?
Okay. I would tell.
We have previously spoke about this. This is why we're having
I would tell everyone that wants to do it, they needs to at least have had some experience doing some personal training or some form of coaching. So the form of coaching has to be. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, just for people to understand, why is that, in your opinion?
So I'll put it, the gap from personal trainer to strength and conditioning coach, just at like the lowest level of S&C, is massive. It's a totally different outlook on anything you're looking at when it comes to like my personal training sessions. I didn't think about past the session. Then also 9 times out of 10, you're working with individuals that the only exercise they're getting during the day is the workout you're doing. So you can kind of go balls to the wall if you want, because the rest of the time they're technically in recovery. But from a strength conditioning standpoint, like I'm just one piece of physical activity in the massive massive jigsaw that they've got of physical activity. Like so, and then there's a long-term outcome and perspective, and it's such a different way of thinking. Like you can't just, it's not the same. You're not doing 4 sets of 12 to get a big chest pump. Like no one cares. Does that make sense? Like
100%.
I'm not doing GVT, like German volume training. I'm not doing 10 by 10 sets on fucking shoulder press. Like that's just not going to happen. So for me, you have to have some basic knowledge, because then, especially when you come into an internship role, you're expected to know how to do a squat. If you can't squat, don't turn up. I'm sorry, like you're just going to waste everybody's time, because now we've got to teach you how to do a squat. Come in with the basic knowledge of a squat, and we can correct certain misinformations or misgivings that you might have, but don't come in with no idea. So for me, everyone has to have some either coaching experience. So you've either like attended like a conference or gone to you've gone to a frigging high school and just helped out at a local high school, or if you're in America, if you're in the UK, then just do some personal training. Like it's the
Communication and contacts as well, though. Like most of the information that I got before I went out to America was just like me finding these S&C coaches, and with the time that I have with them, just pick their brain as much as possible.
Yeah. Now it's a lot different to when I initially started, because I initially started looking at this in like 2017, and even then, 2018, it was like a different level of information. Like I used to sit there and do. If you heard of Mike Boyle,
yep.
Right, so I used to sit there. I used to work every Sunday in the gym as a personal trainer on his website and looking at his blog, looking at every argument or conversation about strength conditioning that could. So for me, you have to have some basic knowledge. You can't just don't waste your time or anybody else's time without actually understanding that. And also, if you understand the demands that a personal trainer has to come under, where it's early mornings and late nights, like you get a similar idea of what's going to be expected. Then there's the big jump to a strength conditioning coach, and then, mate, that the fields that it's your entry levels here, and then the top, the creme de la creme is like all the way up here. Like the gap is massive. Like I'd like to say I'm still probably in that bottom half, still trying to find my way.
Yeah.
But then also, it's important, like you said, probably finding the right mentors as well is kind of hard and important. Finding the right people that kind of align with your beliefs and thinking, but also being open-minded as well. You cannot be closed off if you want to do this.
I think that this is a brilliant point that you just brought up, is that you have to continuously progress and not be tied down to one way of working. And I think with the gap that you explained, so like entry level, creme de la creme, but having spoke to some coaches, the creme de la creme still think they're down here as well. And they're looking at some of the coaches that they were looking up to. Like we've spoke about a particular coach that sort of falls asleep to YouTube videos on the industry, and that coach he's done for well for himself as well.
Yeah.
So it's like it's always having that mentality of like I'm still a newbie.
Yeah, 100%, and it's also pulling. I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you're only pulling from one source of information. If you've got to start looking at everywhere. Like a good example, right? I'm looking at I'm focusing on the football and the soccer realm, right? But then I still look at a guy called Zach Deschamps, who's down at TCU. Like he's got some amazing stuff, but it's baseball. So like I have to look at certain things where I translate. Some things can translate straight away over to what I do, and it's great. But then I'm also looking at sports science. Like what's the sports science trend? Because that's an ever evolving our industry's so young. It's
Mm-hmm.
what, like 50 years old now, right? Like the 80s is kind of when it started. Like we're still learning all the time. People, the information on people is still evolving all the time, and what human performance is always changing.
Mm-hmm.
And also the demands of any game or sport that you play evolves and changes again. So we've got to kind of keep up, and you can't afford to just sit there and
Wait for it to happen.
be complacent in your ideas of what you think is right or wrong. And then on the flip side of that, you can't take in too much because there's so much
Mm.
noise sometimes. You've got to just start figuring out what's good noise and what's bad noise, or what you agree with and what you disagree with. Like Manny, mate, we'll have a different of opinion on certain things, but it doesn't mean whether or not you're right or I'm right. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a million ways. There's different ways to skin a cat. Like
100%.
you can get the same outcome, but just do it two different ways.
Yeah. I was actually having this conversation with Ciaran, and we sort of mentioned it on the podcast, but you can agree with a coach 95% of the time.
Mm-hmm.
That 5% where you disagree, but your ability to navigate and sort of express those 5%, that makes you a good coach and a good communicator in between differences.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I personally, I think that if we think of a child's day-to-day activity and the loads that they subject themselves to without knowing, I think load, not again, I'll make this clear. Movement efficiency, 100% the best way to do and progress a kid athlete. But how many times are they jumping off a step or jumping off a tree or pulling themselves up
Mm-hmm.
and up a tree or something? That is still load. Like they are
Mm-hmm.
still subjecting themselves to load. So I think with load development, they can start about, I would say, 12, 13. I would
Mm-hmm.
start putting them under load.
Mm-hmm.
But it's it's looking at different things and how to properly progress them through it. Like
Yeah.
100%. Like I will always teach movement efficiency over anything.
Mm-hmm.
Can they crawl up into their neck? Can they get up without using their hands? Can they crawl? Can they hollow press? Can they roll over without touching the floor with their hands or feet? Like
Mm-hmm.
I think that's still important. But it's again that 5% that we might disagree on. It's how we navigate that and how we sort of put that forward that makes us good communicators in this industry.
Yeah. For me, it was again, Matt Boyle being the first person I probably actually listened to. He turned around and was like I'm I've been in it for, I think he's been in it for like 40 years or something.
Yeah, he is
Like
the industry.
he's been in it for ages. He's like a grandfather of the industry. But he's like, I'm still open. I still listen. Like,
Mm,
and I've watched him. And don't get me wrong, him on social media is hard sometimes to watch because he says things that are vehemently against a lot of people's ideas, and whether or not that's for attention or not, I don't know. But um, I'm able to have that open discussion and understand, like, if you can validly explain why you've done something, then I'll take that on board. And being open to new ideas and things, but also at the same time be resistant sometimes to new stuff, because everything, I don't want to say it comes back in the circle, but like
mm,
sometimes you might have done something, there's a new wave, but then you still come back to the old stuff. Like the basics are the basics for a reason.
mm-hmm,
But then adding those new and nicer things are always good. But yeah, no, I think you can probably get something from everyone. And like we discussed, even when we did the internship at UW, like me and you both took different things away. And then
mm-hmm,
even when I was talking with the other interns, like we're all at different stages in where we were at in our careers. Some more advanced than others, and others less advanced than others. But then what some people took away, some people had never been in a college weight room, other people had
mm-hmm,
been in a college weight room. So then your total outcome of what you take away from the experience is different. Like for me, like I didn't need the weight room stuff because I'd got such a good exposure from the University of Cincinnati. But other
mm,
people have never had that experience that I had. Like we even talked about before, like I had a mentor that literally sat down with us every week. He spent hours upon hours with us.
Berating.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'm
like
joking. I'm joking.
discussing everything or telling us we were right or wrong. But like
I
sometimes,
think that is important though. Like,
yeah,
and we spoke about this in depth, and it's like, if you're creating these programs for these athletes, why are you doing it? What are you trying to elicit? And why has that exercise accomplished this?
yeah,
Like, I remember I started when I was 13. By the end of my first year, our coach got us to write our own programs, and then he would ask us questions on why. He gave us like the fundamentals, like
hmm
strength, you do this; power, you do this; if you want to do this, you do that; this, you do that. And I was like, sweet. So I wrote mine down, and he was like, why? And then I was like, because you told me to. He was like, no, but like, why have you put that in? What do you
hmm
want to get out of it? I was like, okay. So like, going through that at a young age is sort of like instilled, and then again, now I send programs to coaches and just be like, what's your thoughts?
yeah,
Like, what do you think? But like, I think that's a key on how to grow this industry as well.
yeah. I think um, the education standpoint of understanding there has to be a rhyme and a reason to do something. You can't just throw it in for the sake of throwing it in. And then, sorry,
Very good.
obviously so my experience similar to what yours was is like I sat down and depending on the criteria that we had to meet, like a workout for 6 weeks, and then for a certain athlete who had certain sport demands, like why'd you do this? What was your progression? Where's your outcome?
Mm,
Like how do you test it? How do you understand where you're going? Right, they're injured. What do you do? Like you've got to have all of that in your back pocket because it happens. Like
hmm
you'll have a kid walk in one week and he's broke his arm.
What do you do then?
What do you do then? That's like you might have like you have a perfect workout and half the workout's upper body strength. Like what do you do?
Yeah.
Well, you can't now. You've got to now change it on the fly as you're going. So having that understanding that like you're adaptable and
hmm
things can you have to have the ability to regress certain things or change it on the fly. Like if you don't have that ability, again, if you're talking about what would be my advice, like get an extensive exercise library in your head quickly.
Which I was just about to say actually. What you're explaining, and I sort of think about this a lot, is having like workout banks in your head. Like if a player can't do this, what do you do? And
Yeah,
on the fly, I'm like, okay, he's doing legs, and he's doing posterior chain to the. He's
yeah,
doing whole lower body. He's doing calf and soleus type training just to get up that
yeah.
resilience of pushing the floor away.
No,
Like
you
sorry.
you've going in, yeah. No, you simply got to have like if you program one exercise, you've got to be able to tell me the bilateral, unilateral versions. You've got to tell me how you can change it up from several different ways of tempo, weight, volume, speed. Like you've got to have all of that
Mm,
in a row. You can, and then also change up the modality in which you're doing that. Like you can't, if someone can't do a bench press, barbell bench press, you've got to be able to tell me like at least 5 other variations of some form of horizontal pressing that you can do
mm,
because you might need it. You need that exercise bank. Like you might not have the space to then go and do dumbbells because, again, in a college weight room, for example, or you might be sharing the weight room with another team, and that other coach might be using the dumbbell pit. So then, what do you
hmm
do? Because you can't now go and do dumbbells with the kid that's got one arm. So now, what's your next opportunity? What's your next progression? Right? Do you have? I don't know. You might have a hammer strength machine where you
hmm
can sit up and do chest press, and they can do it single arm. Yeah, great. Go do that. But like if you've not thought about all of those problems, or you go and grab a band, like you've got to have all of that in your head,
hmm
and that comes with time and experience. But
100%.
also with it, again, a lot of experimentation. Spend the time yourself as well working out, but then also um, find the right pieces of information, books
hmm
or Instagram, Twitter, whatever you want. Oh, sorry, X or whatever you want to use. Yeah. Whatever you want.
One of the biggest lessons I learned at college was from the S&C lecturer. And so we were tasked to make a program, and this athlete had to go through this program. And the sessions were an hour long, and you sort of had to fit in as much as you could within that hour.
Hmm.
And the biggest lesson I learned was to count my rest time and my exercise time.
Hmm.
See, because like in theory, my session was just below an hour.
Hmm.
That was just like rest time counting, but I didn't account for the exercise time.
Yeah.
So essentially, that session overran by quite a lot. And my lecturer was like, "Count up your rest time." I was like, 45. And cool. What about your exercise time? I was like, huh? Like, yeah, that still takes time off the session, doesn't it? I was like, yeah. And then he was like, so how long do you have? We'll give it a minute per exercise or per
Hmm.
set or per sort of grouping. And he was like, what's the time now? I was like, ah.
Hmm. Yeah, you've got to. Again, I never had that opportunity. I learned kind of, I want to say, trial and error in
Mm.
doing the workouts, either with clients or myself. Like 5 sets of 5 on the barbell bench press takes a while. Like that takes a while. So then if you've got,
Oh,
if you've got 30 minutes to do a workout, like I'm not throwing in 5 sets of 5 on bench press. Like
mm.
I don't have the time nor the inclination to want to do it because it's going to take up at least half of my session, if not
Yep.
more. Because people are going to load it heavy. It's 5 reps. Then you're going to have a longer break. Then you've got to get the machine set up. Then you've got to break it down. You got to strip weights, add weights. Like again, like you said, it all adds up, right? So yeah, no, it's I love it. Like it's hence why I'm doing it. But like it's there's a lot to it which people
Yeah.
don't understand. And
I
I think
think
if you
people don't realize how much science actually goes into it as well.
yeah,
Like,
like
especially coming from our backgrounds, like you've said that America's more coaching, UK is more science based,
mhm.
but like that doesn't mean that they don't know the science part of it.
No, no, we're still talking like I don't know. Some obviously, if you want to talk about like people went through the triphasic phase, a phase of lifting before when Chaldetes was a hot top was like the super hot topic. So everyone started doing progressions on from like 2 second eccentrics all the way up to 6, and then they would run through an isometric phase and then a concentric phase, and they would do all of that. Then people then do conjugate system and west side barbell system where the change like it's there's so much theory and I don't say theory crafting, but like there's so much there's so many
But
ways to do things.
there's so many ways to skin a cat.
Yeah, yeah. Like it's and then there's so much science on different things. Like
Mhm.
for example, I'm going through Alex Natera's isometric program at the moment, like his artist training, and like I've got to try and think. Well, I really like it and I really enjoy it, and I want to see it work for myself. So like, how do I
Mhm.
implement it with the guys I've got or the people I'm using with, and can I use it? Obviously, with his course, I can use it in return to play, or I can use it in healthy athletes. I can use it all year round. I can use it in just a specific dosage. Like there's, and then there's science to back that up.
Mhm.
Like there's a number and a rhyme and a reason to why you're doing certain things. Because you're not looking anymore at just like basic hypertrophy exercises where I'm trying to get jacked, and that's the problem, if, in my opinion, with again, I've told him to just do a personal training course, but like if you do a personal training course, everything looks at it from a hypertrophy bodybuilding standpoint. Like you're looking at volume and
Mhm.
building basic, like doing basic splits of like chest and tries and back and buys
It's
and yeah, and like
golden
yeah,
traps.
yeah,
Yeah.
you need that to start with, but that's the issue. Like you can't look at things change again in strength and conditioning because you don't look at it that way. You're not looking at. I look at movement patterns and
Mhm.
game demands, and I'm trying to reverse engineer what I can from the game to put it into the weight room. But obviously, that's kind of impossible because you can't actually do the demand. But now we do obviously the tactical sessions. That's a great way. That is like the most perfect way of doing a reverse engineer of the sporting demand in a drill based setting. That's as close to the sport or the demand itself in game as we can get. So yeah, it's like it's a hard one. It's such a broad topic to kind of get stuck into. Like we could be here for another 2 hours talking about that.
100%.
I'm being honest. And then same with the science of what, not just that now, but the science of load management and testing and all. Like it can get overwhelming how much data you can start to collect and how much sports science you want to go into, and you've got to start picking your battles now. Like you have to start turning around and go, right, I'm going to do this, this, and this, because I can't do 20 different data points, because then, 20 different kinds of testing or screening or monitoring, because then you've got then probably like 100,000 data points, especially if you've got several athletes. Like I could not imagine doing that in American football.
Yeah,
120
it's also
kids.
not time efficient.
Yeah, it's not, right? You've got to start looking at certain things, and you can't cover all of those things with a small team. You'd have to have an army of people doing it at the same time. So again, it's starting to bring all that overwhelming noise and data and sports science and lifting and kind of narrowing it down and squashing it into something manageable that we can kind of ensure we get the outcome that we need, and then move on to a different one if you're going to target something else.
100%. Now you nailed it. Absolutely nailed it. If you just let everyone know where they can find you, and
probably the best place is going to be LinkedIn. That's probably the most, like I'm probably on it the most. At Ciaran Gannon. Yeah, you should be able to pretty much find me on there. My name's not that common. That's probably like the one that I'm on the most in regards to what people are doing. And if you contact me on there, I'll probably reach out to you the quickest. I'm pretty slow on everything else. Otherwise, it's just my personal stuff. That one's like my best professional, if you want to call it that. But one day I'll probably do like a proper Instagram and stuff like that.
Nice. Coach Gannon. Perfect.
All right.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Have a good one. And then I'll catch you later.